Today we're going to be building a React navbar. So showing you a quick demo here of a side navigation with some submenus. This is what we're going to be building using the React Create app. So right now, if we jump into it, I've set up a React Create app and I'm just cleaning up the code that is given to you when you load that boilerplate, removing the logos, cleaning up some of the initial code there, and now we're going to be jumping into creating a component. So to start off with this tutorial, we're going to be creating a side nav parent component, and within that side nav parent component, we're going to have a child component which renders the submenus. So we'll start off with the parent component here, creating a functional component called side nav, and within this we're going to render some placeholder data and just call it side navigation. We are then going to export this and import this into our app.js file where the entire app for the side nav will live. So import that side nav component, place it within the header wrapper that's comes with the Create app, the Create React app. So as you can see here on the right screen, we have the server already started, and you can see our placeholder component, side navigation. So with that, we're going to have to create a child component, and within this child component will live the data for the submenus. So we start off with a side item component, import React as usual, create a functional component, and this will be living within the side nav parent. So again, creating some placeholder data here just for the meantime until we create a data schema that we can pass down from the parent to the child. So we'll just call it side item, export default side item, and then this will be imported into the side nav parent component. So we'll import side item into the side nav.js file. And then as you can see here, we're eventually going to conditionally render and map out a bunch of child side item components. But for the meantime, I'll use some temporary data and empty array before we create our actual array later in the video. So right now, using that temporary array, we're going to map over data that we'll create pretty soon. And that data will be mapped to the side item child component, and later that data will get passed down as props from the parent to child. So right here, we're creating the side item, mapping it with temporary data and passing index so it has a unique identifier. And now, since we're going to need some data to pass down, we'll create our data file. And to do that, we'll create a data folder, create a file called nav-items data.js. And here in this file, we are going to create an array of objects with some temporary data with keys called name, links, and open, which will be the state of the submenu, whether it's open or close, and we'll be able to toggle this later on in the video to open and close the submenus. So we're going to be using a bunch of temporary data here, a title called submenu, and then two, which will relate to the path that someone would want to redirect to. But for the meantime in this video, we're really just focusing on creating a super simple sub menu. So right here, all the data is going to be the same. We'll create a open variable that's going to be default to false, and that will get triggered to true when we want to open that submenu. So right here, just duplicating the data 4 times, creating a product section, something you typically see on a traditional website, an about section, and a contact section. And feel free to name the titles whatever you want and use, whatever links you'd want to add to your hrefs and your anchor tags. But for this video, we're just going to be using placeholder data. So we import that placeholder data now and replace the temporary data object, array. So nav items will be placed there, fixing the import, and this should render some child components. So as you can see here to your right, side navigation renders the side item children 4 times because that's how much data we have in our nav items data.file. So as you can see there, we are passing an items prop from the parent that contains the link, the name, and the open data from the nav items data.js file. So right here we're destructuring it just to make it easier to read when passing it down. We don't have to put props.items.name. And then to keep in mind, we're going to have to open and close our submenu, and we're going to conditionally render the links within side item. So we're going to create a state called isOpen with the set open to trigger it using hooks. So react.useState, passing open in, which is false, and then conditionally rendering when isOpen equals true. And we'll be mapping over this data that we created in links. So right here, creating a div and a p tag to pass the data down, as well as an anchor tag to pass the to variable. But right now 2 is only defaulted to a hash, so feel free to name it whatever you want or extrapolate this component to your needs. And then again here we're destructuring it to make it easier to read, because within link there's a title and a to, versus writing it as link.title and link.to. Create the p tag and then pass down the title variable. So right here there's going to be an error because I forgot a parenthesis, so adding that here in front of linked as well as on the bottom should fix this. So as you can see here, I'm trying to click on side item, but I can't because now we want to update the isOpen to toggle it to true or false. To do this, we're going to have to create an onClick function, and when a side item component is clicked, it will trigger the state to either false or true. So right here we create an open side nav function and use the set open to toggle isOpen to true or false, depending on its current state. We'll create an onClick function on the div that's wrapping the entire side nav component, call it there, and when we click here, it should work, but I made a mistake when creating the onClick, so it should be onClick with a capital C. That's the reason the side nav submenu items are not showing, so I'll fix this really quick. So now if you look to the side, yes, the submenu items should be loading here. And that basically completes the JavaScript for this tutorial. Super simple side nav and just cleaning it up, passing a unique identifier as a key. And for the rest of this video, I'm going to be using some CSS that I've created beforehand and just copy and paste that in there. Feel free to pause the video if you want to copy the styles that I've created beforehand. But this is a super simple side navigation bar that you can create where it drops the submenus within a conditional render, and you can toggle that to open and close based on the isOpen state. So right now I'm styling the parent component with some styles that I've already created. Again, feel free to pause the video if you want to copy these styles or style it however you want. Basically wanted to keep this super simple and style it within the components themselves, so I'm using CSS and JS. You can use other forms of styling whether that be styled components or traditional CSS, creating a CSS file and importing styles per page or per component, I mean. So right now I'm just styling the p tags with the same CSS and JS style component. And then I'll later style the link as well as the div that's wrapping that. Mainly just adding margin, fixing up some of the font sizes, adding background colors to just clean up the site navigation. But a majority of the JavaScript was done before this, and it was a super simple nav. We could definitely add additional features here to create different hover effects or fade effects. As you can see there, I was initially going to do some fade animations, but for this tutorial I wanted it to be super simple, just showing a drop down there, so ignore the keyframes animation there. I'll clean that up and remove that. And then last but not least, just styling the anchor tags. So bringing up a link style back to the A tag, styling that. And that basically will wrap up the video for basic styling. So as you can see there, side item, click, it shows the sub menu, and then I forgot that I needed to change the temporary data there, side item, and actually use the name that we passed down from our data object, our data array. So we have home, products, about, and contact. And that basically completes our site navigation. There is a quick style fix that I will do in app.js because I forgot that I wrapped this using the create React app header, which has some default styles with it. So I'll remove that, and then that should clean up the rest of this component. And there you go. So site navigation, super simple in React, basic JavaScript. If you guys like this video, feel free to comment, like, and subscribe, and recommend anything that you would like me to create for the future.